This podcast contains spoilers, so listen at your own risk or call back after you've watched the movie.
You know who you call. Leave a message. Maybe they'll call you back. Then again, maybe they won't.
We're having ourselves quite a little game of phone tag here.
Ring. I usually get this guy's answering machine.
I'll call you right back.
If you're there, please pick up the phone. I really want to talk to you.
I check my fucking messages every day when I come home from work. My answering machine, zero. I got a blinking light.
All I have to do is pick up this phone right here, inform the cinema, and your plan's kaput.
No, I ain't got no phone. I had to pull, because people calling all the time, and who needs the aggravation, right? Interruptions.
Hey man, just taking a stroll out to the shops now. Saturday lunchtime, ominous sky. At least it's held so far. Nice relaxing day anyway. Just want to send you a quick voice about the film I watched last night, Miracle Mile. Now, I'm going to start by reading a list of names to you. These are all names that a week ago I had if you'd said any of these names to me, I wouldn't have had a clue who you're talking about. And I wager that a week from now, if you said any of these names to me, I wouldn't have a clue who you're talking about. But they're all cast members of the film Miracle Mile. Mykelti Williams' son, Kurt Fuller, Denise Crosby, Olan Jones, Earl Bowen, Diane Delano, Edward Bunker, Brian Thompson. These are all what people generally describe as that guy. Those people that pop up in movies, TV shows. The second you see their face, you recognize them. If you're a bit of a film nerd like us, you probably have a bit of a warm, fuzzy feeling when you see them pop up. Oh, this guy, this girl. And I think that guy phrase gets overextended to the likes of Oliver Platt, like people who are massive, big name actors with like hugely successful careers. I think that's like an overuse of the term. Really, to me, like the classic that guy is that person that like you see them, you recognize them, you can't name them, you can't even really say what they're in, what you know them from, but you know that you like them, and you know that you're happy that they've shown up, and you're happy for them. Almost like you kind of lightly invested in their career. I'd imagine these people are not really rich, they're certainly not famous, they're just kind of like professionals working a career for decades, with a good, comfortable quality of life, but working constantly in mostly not particularly special projects, occasionally popping up here and there in like really iconic, brilliant things that we love. Anyway, all those people are in this film, Miracle Mile. It might be the ultimate that guy movie. I'm not even mentioning some people who are in this. There's people who are in this in like very small role, like to the point where I didn't even spot them in the movie. Like I noticed in IMDb that Peter Berg is in this, or the female Marine from the film Aliens. She's in this. I didn't notice her. Even the leads, which are Anthony Edwards and I forget the name of the girl, May Wiggumham or something. I can't remember her name, but she's the mother from The Affair. That's mainly how I know her, but she's been in this, that, and the other. And Anthony Edwards is kind of like, he's almost like the A-list of that guy in the sense that he's transcended that guy to the point where, he was on ER. He managed to kind of become, I guess you could say, famous. And obviously Top Gun was a massive movie, but like, he's also, I'm sure he's not in the top 1,000 most famous actors in Hollywood kind of thing. So it is a true that guy movie. Like it has the highest quantity of people that you recognize whilst having almost no one that you can name in this film. And that alone is a kind of reason to watch it, a bit of a pleasure to kind of watch a film like that. Now, I stumbled upon it because I was scrolling through Instagram and there was a video popped up, and the context of the video was like it was a scene of Anthony Edwards in a phone booth having a conversation, I barely got into the video when I saw, like, my eyes darted down and I saw the this description. I've just got a little cat following me here, coming over for a pet. That's nice. Yeah, and the video description, I think, said this first 20 minutes of this movie, it starts out just like a regular rom-com, and then it was like one of the biggest left turn, or I can't quite remember the wording, but I immediately stopped the video because I was like, okay, this is, I guess, like From Dusk Till Dawn, or there's millions of examples of this, or like a movie that initially presents itself as one thing and then is something quite different, albeit not halfway through, like From Dusk Till Dawn, but still, like that's a classic kind of intriguing approach to a film, is kind of a film that you don't quite know what to expect out of it. So I didn't want to like ruin the surprise. Obviously, I'd somewhat ruined the surprise by the best way to watch this film, which I hopefully have provided you with, is to watch it not even knowing that, just like watch it 100%, not expecting any kind of left turn. So I'm hoping that you didn't read anything about it before watching it. But anyway, that was enough to kind of piqued my interest, and then I went into the comments, avoiding any spoilers, but just kind of like have a quick browse, and people were like, such an underrated movie, like such an underseen hidden gem and everything. I was like, okay, cool, this sounds cool, this sounds intriguing, so I'll check this out. And I've actually got quite a few good films from Instagram lately. I mean, thinking about it, there's something to like social media, which obviously is social media is in many ways a complete cesspit, but it is also, if used correctly, a platform for outsiders, like people that aren't being kind of emboldened or funded by major media outlets, that are not really, I mean, yes, they're beholden to like the amount of likes and follows and stuff like that they get from people. So you could make the case that like they operate in a kind of capitalist ecosystem as well, of like having to meet demand with their supply and all that. So there's definitely an element of that, but also it's kind of they're at liberty to ignore that if they want. And what that means is, unlike kind of ad supported like websites or newspapers or whatever, like bigger media outlets where established film critics work, the conversation doesn't need to pivot around what is the best for business, which is obviously going to be like the latest release, whether it's I don't know, like the new Marvel movie that comes out, or even if it's like the new art house movie that comes out, like the Materialists, for example. You know, there's these kind of guaranteed, this is going to get lots of audience members things. And then when it's a lot of spaces you go to, they might be talking about older movies, but it's going to be Blade Runner, it's going to be Mulholland Drive or something. These kind of things that are just guarantee audience traction. Lately, because Instagram is just, there's no barrier for entry. And when I say Instagram, it's just like the one I use, but TikTok, Instagram, completely interchangeable. Because these things are like zero barrier for entry, very little effort. Like whoever made this video, they didn't produce any of like original video content. They just played a clip from a thing. So it's really easy to platform people who aren't operating on this sort of, I have to be like my whole like the economics of my life are tied up in this, so I have to be talking about the most viral or popular content. And I don't know how much there is to this, but I'm saying all this because lately I've got quite a lot of like deep cut recommendations from Instagram, and I feel like it's really working out for me. I feel like it's steering me towards films that I wouldn't have come across on my own. Like I don't need any media outlet to tell me that Barry Lyndon exists. But this film, Miracle Mile, I've never ever heard of it. And there's every chance that I might have just never ever seen it had I not watched that little Instagram reel. So I'm really, really pleased that I stumbled upon it. The first 20 minutes, as was kind of indicated to me, is very different from the rest of the film. It starts as a sort of quirky rom-com, a bit of a 500 Days of Summer type of thing. It's difficult for me to work out how self-aware it is in its quirkiness. Like, if the maker of this film is just such a quirky person that they're trying to make a pretty straight-faced rom-com dynamic. I don't know. It starts at the La Brea Tar Pits, which is a location I was aware of. I listened to a podcast about it. It's kind of an interesting thing, considering it's in the middle of, well, I know it's in the middle, but somewhere in LA. Yet it's this sort of like prehistoric tar pit that's incredibly dangerous, and you know, step into it, you're fucked. You're going down under. And this main character, Anthony Edwards, our film's from 88, so it's hard to like get a complete grip on like what, if he's an archetype and what archetype he is. Like, he seems to be kind of like a bit of a nerdy, he's almost like a Tim Burton character in a way. Like, it's hard to even like pigeonhole him down to something, but he definitely doesn't seem like your kind of classic leading man from a film from this age or from any era. And he finds this girl. I'm unclear what she is. Is she like a teacher operating a school trip or something? And he instantly falls in love with her. It all feels very fairy tale and unrealistic and quirky. And he makes plans with her. He takes her back to her massive high-rise tower block building where her grandparents live in separate towers, and makes plans to see her that night at midnight, and then goes home and goes to sleep, setting his alarm for midnight, and chucks a lit cigarette out, which a crow picks up and puts in its nest, and that causes a fire. I thought it was going to kill him and it's going to be a ghost movie or something. Turns out that it just shorts the electricity so his alarm doesn't go. But all that first 20 minutes is very quirky. I wasn't fully on board. I was like, well, I don't really like these characters. I don't actively dislike them, but I'm not charmed by them. I'm not invested in their love story. And if this is kind of like a 500 Days of Summer or something, where you're supposed to be sort of swept up in the romance of these like young, free-spirited, quirky, outsider, interesting people, then I'm going to struggle to do that journey. That's not really that. It reminds me a little bit of John Hughes stuff. I mean, it's a 1988 movie about young people in love, so it's not like surprising that it evokes John Hughes. But I'm thinking of like Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Breakfast Club, which are kind of two films about young people going, you know what, we don't have to live like the rules say we have to live. Like, let's just go on an adventure, whether it's within a high school or within a city. And it is that kind of like urban fairy tale. It's got adventure vibes already in the first 20 minutes somehow. Like the world is a playground. And yeah, it's a difficult thing to get right. It kind of is, that type of film is a bit reliant on the charisma of the actors, or just like, I don't know, certain qualities that I don't know that I certainly don't think that she had. Forget her name, but she's a bit of a weird presence. She's a bit of a manic pixie dream girl, but that doesn't always work for you. Like, it kind of depends on how you like your pixies. And I wasn't connecting with her. I actually thought she was Ali Sheedy from Breakfast Club, but she's, again, I forget her name, but I've seen her in various things, but most notably in The Affair when she's much older. In fact, I think I read that Anthony Edwards married her, but in something like 2021 or something crazy. So I wonder if they had a relationship on set of this movie, or they just like they've always been friends since then. Interested to know. Anyway, I was like kind of on board, kind of not on board. They have their first kiss, I believe, outside of Johnny's coffee shop or whatever it's called, that like diner place, and it's like behind them, in the background, kind of blurry, is that wall of flashing lights, and that's such a compelling image. And then it cuts to like a big wide shot, kind of almost like establishing shot of the location with him standing there, and it's such a great location. And that's sort of them saying, okay, well, I'll see you later. And even in the first like 20 minutes, I'm like, this movie looks incredible. It's one of the best looking movies I've seen in a very long time. So much great detail on screen, whether it's like very heightened, like unusual stuff you're looking at, or if it's just like general city texture, general kind of urban texture. It's like, I don't know, it's absolutely stunning to look at. But anyway, I'm kind of on board. I'm kind of not rolling my eyes, but I'm kind of wondering how long I'm going to have patience to watch these characters in love. And then we get the phone call. Obviously, he wakes up too late. He wakes up at 3:45. He goes to the diner and calls her and says, "Come down for like a morning champagne or something." I'm like, Jesus Christ, what are you expecting her to be fucking awake at 3:45 or 4 a.m. whenever you got there? And he gets the fateful phone call, a wrong number, a misdial, wrong area code from the bunker in North Dakota, which is interesting because that's the only really, you could argue, and it's very nebulous, but it could be argued that all of the hysteria in the movie comes from that phone call. And that's more likely that it's all sort of rippling out from that phone call, but actually like the police have been made aware and these people have been aware. And when it's a citywide panic, it's coming from lots of sources. But for quite a long time, the movie is sort of in this space of like more and more people are freaking out and doing life-changing things. But can it all be sourced back to this one phone call? I think it's when they're in that shopping mall and the guy that has been driving him around dies with his, I assume, girlfriend. And then they walk outside and the cops like are retreating. I think that's the first time in the movie really where we get the impression that like, no, this is definitely now like a information that's coming from multiple sources. But for quite a long time, it's a bit like you could interpret it multiple ways, which is really cool. So they get the phone call and it is it's unclear whether it's a prank or not. Me and my wife were talking about it and we were like, would you believe that? Would you buy that? And she was saying, well, pre-social media, pre-TikTok, everyone being essentially like candid camera media outlet, yes. Nowadays you would think like there's probably something else going on here, but back then it was a lot more believable. Now of course prank phone calls existed back then 100%, but with the gunshots and everything like that, it feels like it's alarming enough that he would very much entertain the possibility that it was real, which is the thing what he does. He's not 100% committed to the idea that it's real, but it's possible enough that it's real that he's like, I'm going to come in and try and verify this by checking if anyone here has a son called Chip or whatever. And we get this like, I actually thought it might be like kind of a bottle episode of a TV show thing where the entire rest of the movie is going to be set in that diner. The diner is incredible. It's one of the best locations I've ever seen in a movie. I'm not just talking about the exterior, but the inside, everything, the whole vibe, all the way it's set up with the different staff members and everything. It's just absolutely fantastic. These like few night owls there that are all scattered around the diner at 4 a.m. Yeah, it's amazing. And I thought, okay, is this going to be like, how would just a ragtag group of average everyday schmoes deal with an impending nuclear attack, which is a brilliant idea for a movie. It immediately sort of shows it presents itself as kind of like a Twilight Zone or a Outer Limits type thing. Like, what if 5 random strangers in a diner were told that the world was going to end? And like, it's that kind of high concept little, you could make it a play sort of thing. Now, ultimately, it goes far beyond that in scale and spectacle and stuff like that. And I read a little bit about the making of it, which is fascinating because the intention was to make it as a much bigger movie with like Kurt Russell or something like that. And you can see like the amount of spectacle that they managed to get out of what I'd imagine was a relatively low budget. You can totally see this movie being made on like a way bigger budget, you know, Paul Verhoeven or something like that doing it. But yeah, anyway, I thought that the whole movie's going to play out in this diner. It's like, how would, like, let's say I just walked into a Greasy Spoon cafe and there's just like 6 other people there. How would me and them like interact with that concept of like a nuke is about to be dropped? How would we verify it? How would we escape it? Like, that is really interesting. I don't think I've seen that movie before. And it plays out brilliantly from there on. I mean, the whole kind of like general trajectory of the film is like ramping up in intensity. And I'm not really often a fan of films where it's just like, this is going to get more and more and more and more extreme over time. And that's going to be the whole plot. That's literally what the whole movie is. It's just it getting more and more and more and more crazy. That's generally a plot, if you want to call it a plot, that I don't like. I think this film is at its best for me before it it kind of, the second half of the movie, it goes, I'm less engaged somehow when it's got to the point where it's like just complete, total and utter chaos. But if you're going to do that, I think they did it really well. I think there's always interesting stuff going along. Now, just to kind of reverse it back a bit, this is a film that came out in 1988. So 1 year before the fall of the Berlin Wall, dissolving the Soviet Union. And we were alive in 88, but we were tiny little kids. So we don't really have this like lived history or experience of knowing what it felt like during the Cold War and the fear of nukes being dropped at any moment that people lived under. And because this is at the very, 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 very end of that, I don't know how much tension and paranoia still existed. I know that, you know, a couple of decades before this, it was like people were living in just complete terror. Just like random people at their breakfast table in middle America were like terrified that something was going to happen. In 1988, I don't know. But obviously it was very much a possibility. I mean, you can certainly see that from the movies from that era that are still so anti-Russian and so paranoid, and just how isolated America and Russia were from each other at that point. So when this film came out, as an audience member sat there in the cinema at 88, it must have been the most fucking intense thing ever to just be sat down watching a movie about a cute little rom-com, and then the Ruskies are dropping nukes. Or, I mean, it's like not, they don't really make it state that that's what's happening specifically. It's very unclear what is happening, but that's sort of the implication. Like, as an audience member back then, it must have just been like, holy shit, I'm now sat there watching the chaos of this is about to happen in 50 minutes. And that's another interesting thing, is the movie is basically in real time. It doesn't really feel like a real-time movie as such. Like it's some movies are set in real time, and there's just like a lot of scenes of like someone driving for like 4 minutes in silence because they really want to hammer home that like minute to minute feeling. It doesn't have that feeling to it, but it is technically more or less like all in real time from that phone call on. But yeah, watching it now, I think I loved this movie, but a lot of its potency is probably lost by the fact that we're not watching it during the Cold War, which people only got opportunity to do so for like a year. Obviously, we live in an era of like Putin, and there's always an ongoing narrative of like nuclear war is coming, it's going to kick off any day now kind of thing, but it's very much backgrounded compared to what it was like back then. So that is a major part of this film. So yeah, we get this wacky, zany, frantic, everybody running out of their cafe, everyone with different plans, different agendas, everyone leaning into their way that they would deal with it. You've got the woman who's like, it later revealed to have had a past relationship with a senator or something, who's recognizes the code words he said, and she's approaching this from a very like high level insider, let's verify this, let's get to this right location. She's got resources, she knows how to get more resources, so she's got like a very high, like top level plan. And then you've got like the owner of the cafe who's got like the kind of the opposite end of the spectrum plan of like chuck as many cans as possible in the back of a truck and just drive. And they're both things that are like, yeah, that's those are two ways that people would be acting. You've got people who are just like, there's no time to fucking get anyone. There's people who are like, I need to get my wife, I need to get my mother, whatever. And it's just like fascinating seeing this scramble play out. If it was coming in like a week, it'd be different, because it's coming in 50 minutes. It's just so direct. And I love that initial adventure of the movie. Now, when he jumps off, and in this brilliant moment where he jumps, he throws the gun out and then just like dives like it's into a pool of water, like belly flops off into the like the overpass or whatever. And then he stops this car, and the guy that picks him up, that black guy, who he's another like very recognizable face, and just adds so much to this movie. You get so much out of all of these like individual people that we know their faces. Like they bring so much to this movie. It's like brilliant character work all around. But anyway, when he gets picked up by this guy, they're driving. Here he's got the trunk full of stereos that he's stolen and stuff, and they have this like great chemistry there. And then they pull into this gas station, and it's like a little mini adventure. The locations, all these like not lit at night, kind of neon urban locations, are amazing. They pull into this gas station, they're filling it up, and then the police come in. You're like, okay, how's this going to be dealt with? And the guy squirts them with gasoline and covers them up with gasoline, and the cop shoots and therefore ignites the gasoline and doesn't fire anything. And that is like radically darker than anything that's been in the movie up to that point. And I didn't like that. Like, now by the end of the movie, it's like the film has got like super dark, and it is ultimately a film about nuclear war. So like, I'm not saying there's no reason for this film to get dark, but it's been such a wacky, light-hearted, fun John Hughes movie up to that point that when you get like these cops being burned alive, it's fucking intense. Like, it's a really, really incredibly dark thing to put into the movie at that point compared to everything that's been in it so far. So if I was saying the movie, or at least the movie from the phone call to that gas station, I was absolutely loving it. I really like the rest of the movie, but I wonder, is there a version of the movie that continues with the sort of, it's apocalyptic, but it's also kind of light. And they didn't do that. And it gets super dark and it ends dark. But by the end of the movie, I'm happy with the whole package. But when that scene came along, it was a real shock to the system. It was also a little confusing because you can logically explain it as he's putting the gasoline on them so that they can't shoot, as a sort of 4D chess type of thing. But it's a bit of an over it's too complex a plan to just intuitively think of the moment. So it reads to me much more like he's just panicked. I'll squirt this, it'll be distracting, and they'll be busy kind of what the fuck's all over me that I can just run away. And then the cop shoots, and maybe she doesn't know, she doesn't sort of put two and two together. If I shoot, then I'm dead kind of thing. But it reads in all sorts of different ways. It also kind of reads that he doesn't mind killing them, he would be it's not some accident. Afterwards he goes, they didn't have to shoot, why did they shoot, I just squirted them. But in the moment it reads as this guy's a fucking psychopath, he's an arsonist, he's gonna just fucking murder them in cold blood. And he's up until this point been a very likable buddy partner to Anthony Edwards. So yeah, it gets a bit muddled there. It gets back on its feet quickly, and again, when I get to the end of the movie, because it's done so much dark stuff, then it's no longer that much of an issue reconciling that moment back in. But at that moment of hitting that, it was okay, Jesus. Now this is a great urban fairy tale, urban adventure movie. Just trying to think of examples that are like that. I would say Fisher King is one of those movies. What other ones are there? There's quite a lot of these where it's we'll take a urban landscape and we're turning into an adventure movie. A bunch of them came to mind while I was watching it, but I can't recall them right now. It's also, it really reminded me of a movie, I'm not sure if you've seen it, that's one of my favorite zombie movies, maybe my favorite zombie movie called Return of the Living Dead, which I guess would have come out around the same time, maybe a little early, maybe 85 or something. And that's a kind of punk, cool, different indie zombie flick. It's not super indie but it's just got a bit of that kind of arty, weird edge to it that this film has. And yeah, a lot of attitudes and a lot of fun to it. So definitely in the early scenes, it was evoking that. But anyway, as we go on this big adventure through town, it gets more and more dramatic. I like, he makes it up to the helipad, and he leaves the girl there. He talks to the guy out there, and he just gets the vibe that we might not actually get a pilot. I know that they've been trying to get their hands on a pilot, but it's not it's far from guaranteed. So he goes off to hunt for a pilot. Now, I didn't realize what he's doing at first. I was why are you fucking going down? Just fucking wait. You almost feel in that situation, you'd be well, I guess the normal movie would be, is the pilot going to show up or not? And they have to wait there. But maybe it looks like the pilot's not going to show up, and then at the last minute the pilot shows up or something like that. But instead what this film does is no, he has to take it into his own hands. He has to go down in the middle of the night to the streets where nobody knows there's a fucking apocalypse on, and just chase down random fucking garbage trucks and people jogging along the street, and just try and retrieve a helicopter pilot in a matter of minutes. And that's again what I love about this film. It's how would a normal people in the middle of the night with no resources or expertise execute a let's escape the nuclear apocalypse scenario, which is just so fun to watch. And he actually manages it. And that whole going into the gym, again, every location in this film is fucking amazing to look at. So much fun. So there's just so much eye candy in this. And he retrieves the pilot from the back, who has his gay lover with him, There's like several queer moments in this film. You got the transvestite early on in the bar, and there's just like a real ensemble of different people in this film all over it, coming from completely different places, either like working well with each other or like sort of butting up against each other. I don't know, I just love that this film just gives you so many ingredients. So he fucking manages to find a helicopter pilot, and he sends him up, and there's pretty soon he's like, there's people jumping across cars, and he ends up down in the sewers, and yeah, there's a hell of a lot going on in this film. I love that they don't his speech, but there was a point shortly around that time where he goes into that mall or whatever when the black guy drives through the window in the cop car, and he dies on the escalator, and he's like walking up the down escalator carrying his dying girlfriend. It's like the film is just stacked with great moments and great imagery and just interesting ideas. It's a bit like an Edgar Wright movie where it's like just crammed full of interesting content. And there's this moment where he looks at it and he's like, this guy and his girlfriend are dead because I said that that something was going to happen. And I said it was going to happen within 50 minutes, and it's been an hour and 10 minutes. I may have just fucking caused these people to die, and all sorts of fucking chaos and pandemonium to go down just because of a prank phone call. And they kind of had to put that scene in. I had various things going through my head, like, is it going to be that there's nothing? Is it going to be that he's burnt alive in his, what he calls a hotel? I wasn't quite clear on, like, does he not live in that area? Is he an out-of-towner? I must have missed something at the beginning that explained why he's in a hotel in the first place. But yeah, is he dead? Is he dreaming? Is it all a dream? Like, nobody likes It Was All a Dream, but if ever there was a movie that would make sense for it to be all a dream, it's this one, because the movie more or less starts with him going to sleep and the electricity cutting off his alarm clock, and then the rest of the movie plays out like a dreamlike adventure. So it's like, what is the reality here? And it's a bit of a Total Recall moment where he gets basically convinced that it's all a fantasy and it's not real. And then it quickly comes to light, no, this shit is fucking real. And then ultimately ends with the two of them being sucked down into the La Brea tar pits in their car. Almost like, they're like, you know what? Place is about to get nuked and we're going to get preserved archaeologically forever. And they're kind of cool with that, which is, yeah, again, the movie's just packed full of stuff. And then I'm kind of happy that we get the nuke at the end, that we get closure on that. I think there's a meaner ending to this movie where you never get to find out if it was real or not. This film at least goes, you know what, it wasn't all for nothing. He didn't just ruin his life and a bunch of other lives because of a prank phone call. I'm not saying LA being nuked is a happy ending, but, at least we get that. We get that closure at the end. And yeah, interesting movie. It's different. It's not, I haven't seen a movie quite like this. And I'd be interested to see, I mean, with this writer-director, who this really feels like a singular vision, like I said, like a Tim Burton movie of that era. Like, it really feels like an auteur movie. Just doing a brief sort of skim online, it doesn't look like any of his other projects are as highly regarded as this. I did watch the trailer for the one before this, which is a Melanie Griffith starring movie, kind of bit of a Mad Max vibe, and that looked quite interesting, but I doubt it's as good as this. This just feels like a real hidden gem. I mean, it's like, I'm thinking of, like, there's a few films like Fish Story is another one where, like, I know about it, but people in general don't know about it. And I really treasure that, because I know that, like, anyone I recommend it to, they're going to watch an amazing movie, but, like, they probably would have found it if it wasn't for me. So yeah, I kind of like having this like catalogue of interesting little hidden gems in my back pocket. Anyway, I hope you had a good time with this, because it is a movie with so much personality that I suppose if you're not liking the personality, you're not going to like the movie. You might actually struggle with the movie quite a lot. And I wasn't crazy about the movie at the beginning, but then, you know, any movie set in a diner, like, I mean, fucking, that movie could have just been them hanging out in that diner, drinking coffee for the restaurant. I probably would have loved it, because I absolutely adore movies set in diners and, you know, those kind of environments depicted on screen. And yeah, there's just a lot I really, really love in this movie. So yeah, hope you had a good time with it, and yeah, let me know your thoughts.
I love the way you open your voice notes constantly with, "Hey man, just gonna send you a quick voice note." Proceeds to give me 39 minutes of content. I don't know what your definition of long is. Just putting on a burger now and some chips. I don't know if that's wise considering I've started this voice note, but I have my niece over for the weekend and they've gone to Crystal Palace Park now for some music festival. So it's been nice having her around. There's been a nice vibe of movie watching and she's enjoying herself. So that's the main thing. But the side note of that is I'm not going to put on a movie like Miracle Mile and take a chance on something like that with a 16-year-old and a partner who doesn't have the same thirst for questing for movies that I have. Not that she wouldn't like this or be interested potentially, but you just got to go with the safe ones. We had Megan 2.0 on this morning. I didn't actually watch it, but I could tell every beat of the movie from my chair facing the kitchen. So I can't really attest to how good or bad that is, but it seems like a very safe movie. Yeah, it's funny what you're saying about the Instagram or TikTok videos you're getting. And another big thing, which I don't think you mentioned, is once you find one video, if it's called a video, wait for a video, an uploaded video cassette tape on Instagram, once you find one of those, then you're in a pocket algorithm almost. So the fact that you stumbled upon one Instagram video with recommendations that were low key and liked, and spend a bit of time in the comments, maybe turn on the sound for, somewhere in the algorithm, no matter how many views or likes, the gram or the talk grandpa is going to send more and more things of that nature to your way. So when you're in the pocket for something like that, it's brilliant and you're constantly going to get more and more great things. But the second you stop to look at a cat video or a dog video or any kind of other video, you might get pushed out of that pocket algorithm. Or maybe it's not as deep as that. Maybe the second you stop to look at a Fantastic Four movie trailer, then you're back out of the pocket algorithm of very interesting choices of movies that you've been enjoying. So yeah, Miracle Mile is a movie with lots to love and lots to talk about. I had a good time with it. I wouldn't be as high as you on it, but it's certainly all the things you said and more, probably. And it is definitely a hidden gem. Hidden gems are overused terms at this point, where a movie that came out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that didn't win an Oscar now is, oh, you need to check out this hidden gem. No, these are the deep cuts. The fish stories, the Miracle Miles, and the coffee table if you're outside a horror algorithm. These are movies you're not really going to come across. And yeah, this movie, God, I've just watched it about an hour ago. So, of all movies, this is the movie that it's hard to get a hold on while you're watching it. It's a movie that I'd probably consider watching again in a few years to really get a hold on it. But I know you told me go in with reading anything about it, which I didn't. However, when I was loading it up on my Netflix, it says the description and it said sci-fi, romance, drama. And I'm thinking, okay, sci-fi. Okay, well, let's see. And while that is entirely misleading, it did make me think I was going to be watching something other than what I was watching. Now, the fact that you said don't find out anything about it, and as much as we try and help each other avoid spoilers, you even saying something like that makes me think that, okay, something's going to happen here. Because it's just that simple to ruin a movie sometimes. And early on, I really liked the visual earnestness of this and the imagery, the cutting to various things, and almost this mini phantom story of a meet cute boy meets girl, boy loses girl, and boy gets girl back again. There's so much going on and compacted into this 5-minute scene, because I know I had to stop it because one of my cats used the litter tray and I don't like piss in a box while I'm doing anything. So I stopped the movie after about 5 minutes and I'm thinking, holy God, I feel like I've just had a whole story here. And there is a story told. There's so much information and so much stuff going on that it's hard to get a handle on what story has been told, but it does feel like there's this whole you know what it is? It's the rom-com version of There Will Be Blood. You know what they say about Daniel Plainview when he gets that gold nugget, and then there's a scene of him trying to get back to town and the camera pans to the hills, and there's a whole movie in between that space that you don't get to see. Well, in this, there's a whole movie condensed. There's a whole rom-com movie condensed in this opening scene to even get to this point where they found each other again. But at the same time, it has brought itself to still an early stage in the relationship. So I liked that and I was interested. But I also knew that the movie was going some other place in my gut because of the pretext you gave or didn't give. And yeah, I wasn't sure how long I could keep up with this version of the movie and how long it could sustain itself. It reminded me something along the lines of Safety Not Guaranteed or Comet, or like you said, 500 Days of Summer. And I actually really like I really didn't think that this type of vibe could exist pre-2000s in this package. And you question whether this is just meant to be played straight and it just feels like those movies we mentioned through the passage of time. And to be honest with you, I don't have an answer, but I really appreciated the type of camera work and the bombardment of enthusiasm that was in the early scenes. And yeah, we get this great locations, great scenes early on when he's meeting the dad of his girlfriend and meeting the mother of his girlfriend, and they don't talk to each other. We get scenes of the balloons and all this and this whole scenario, and it feels like this whole other movie has been painted. And then we get what would have been the third act of a rom-com where something crazy happens and he's got to get there by this time or she'll leave. He's got to get to the diner. It has an essence of that and an energy of that very early in the movie. And then he goes to sleep and this power cut happens. And I'm thinking, okay, here comes the sci-fi. But what sci-fi are we going to get? And I was trying to guess, and it wasn't very distracting because there's so much going on. You don't have too much time to think by this point. And I had a thought, oh, well, recently you said you listened to a podcast about time loops. Maybe they recommended another one called Miracle Mile. Maybe that's where this is going. And then he wakes up. I'm trying to think, in what scenario would a time loop even matter here? Is he going to go back to the caveman times? Because we've seen the mammoths and everything early on. What are we going to get here that's sci-fi? And you mentioned that Anthony Edwards, it's very hard to place him, whether he's Tim Burton or what type of vibe he's encompassing. I feel like he's... I'll tell you one thing what he's encompassing, and that is the vibe of an 80s lead. Whether he's good at it or bad at it is open to interpretation, but he is certainly a character and someone that they love to trot out in 80s movies, from Back to the Future or John Hughes, all these type of movies, like you said. Now, it's not a like for like, but he certainly has this type of vibe. And like you said, then he gets to the diner, and of course, his girlfriend or whatever she is not going to be at the diner at this point. And we get these great shots and the director's got a great eye for visual storytelling as well, in the most subtlest of ways. Early on, where we see the clock spinning around on top of the diner, there's certainly a sense that time is ticking and time is moving in this movie. Like you said, this movie doesn't feel like a movie like Boiler Point or that movie Lock, where Tom Hardy in a car, and all these type of movies that are set and drawing attention to the fact that they're set in real time. But there is a clock that starts to tick early on in this movie. That's a very slow clicking clock. And as the movie goes on, we feel like the pace of that clock subconsciously ticks ever so faster. And it culminates in absolute frenzied panic. So when he arrives at the diner and the phone rings, I thought, okay, this is the point where the movie starts to... This is the movie. And I couldn't tell you how many times I was watching this movie and thought, okay, this is the movie. This is the movie now. And the woman comes in with the briefcase and she's doing some kind of thing on the briefcase that seems covert. And you're thinking, okay, this is the movie. And then he gets the phone call and we hear about the nukes and we hear about Russia and we hear the bullets of the guy getting shot. And I'm thinking, okay, this is the movie now. And then he goes into the diner and he tries to convince all these people. I constantly thought that this is where the movie is going to wrap itself around. And boy, do we never get that. And you posed the question as well that you had with your wife. Would you believe this phone call in 1988? And I don't know. We can't get inside that mind. We can't get inside the Cold War hysteria. We can't get inside the headspace of a character at that time. We certainly wouldn't believe something like this now. In fact, even if we heard something on the news, we barely believe it at this point. We've become accustomed to false information and fake news and misinformation that we would never trust anything like this. But I think the question that this movie manages to pull off is, does the Anthony Edwards character believe this? And I definitely think he believes it, and he starts getting into a frenzy panic, and it starts to snowball. And there's a lot of different places that this movie keeps switching to and moving to, that I couldn't say this movie sits on a rhythm for a long time. But you mentioned that you didn't like the final third as much. I think that is where everything comes together. That is the piece that brings everything else that I was unsure about to light. And I feel like what is fantastic about this movie and amazing and a sight to behold is the fact that this movie exists in a space pre the pre-apocalypse, right? We get movies all the time like Independence Day, 2012, probably every Roland Emmerich movie actually, where there's some data center, there's some person, there's some expert who gets a signal, sees something, hears something, gets data sent to his computer. They're coming, the aliens are coming, a meteorite is coming, something's coming. And then the movie is about the expert who has links to all these people, like the president, someone in the White House that they had a relationship with before, some link to high authority in order to change something. And then the early scenes of the movie is them trying to get to that person, them trying to get the person to listen, and then it's a little bit too late. And then we get a very, very early scene of a motorway. I guess it's the first act climax. In Independence Day, it's when the alien blows up the building and the White House, and there's absolute chaos on the freeway. And I think in Armageddon, it's the meteorites destroy all sorts of America, and 2012 is the first earthquake, and that's the first act of our movie. In this movie exists in such a unique place of, what about the person who finds out earlier than almost everyone else on the ground? This is a grassroots level person who finds out stuff. And of course, it's found out through a phone call that was meant for someone else, which is a brilliant device in order to get us this information for the ball to start rolling. And we see somebody without any skills, like you said, without any pull, without any sway, without any expertise, trying to figure out what to do before that panic began, before that first act climax of the freeway has began. It starts off way earlier than that. And it starts off essentially in the diner, where he's just trying to get a bunch of people to hear him out. And then that starts a panic. And then the clock starts ticking. There's a frenzy. And I think there's a lot of campness in this. And there's a lot of, I don't want to say, well, I think you use zany, it's the right word. There's a lot of camp zaniness in this, in how the characters act, how the characters talk, some scenes as well, like that ridiculous plot device of the parents not talking and then driving off together. That was just purely put in to give you that moment early on. And there's a lot of, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. And this type of thing, this really lowbrow fun dialogue. Do you know what this reminds me of as well? Freaky Tales, that Bowden and Fleck joint, the two that I've liked for a long time now. I can't remember their first name. It manages to have such a sense of fun and have so many serious things happening, but through such joy and non-heaviness. We talked about Triangle a few weeks ago, where it's just such a heavy movie. This has way more fucked up shit than Triangle on a mass level, but even if some of these things affect you while you're watching, it's almost a duality. You're having fun, and then there's some fucked up shit affecting you massively in this movie, but you don't even have time to dwell in it and wallow in it. And I think in this, this is a pandemic movie as well, and it's the pandemic of panic and frenzy. We see it with one person, we see it with people in the diner, and I think if I could be kind to some of the things in this movie, like the guy on top of the helicopter pad losing his mind, and the person following Anthony Edwards through the tunnel firing guns because he's standing on his car. I think all these things can be explained through panic and fear of death and life, and people just absolutely losing it. And like I said, the culmination of this movie ends where most disaster movies finish their first act. And by the time we see him running across that familiar traffic scene of clogged up cars and the journey and everything we experienced before this, I was thinking, this is brilliant. This is brilliant how all these early scenes of not knowing where the movie is going to go and when the movie begins, this is where it comes together. Because even though this movie, in a sense, has different vignettes, we have the diner, we have the back of the car, we have the guy from Forrest Gump who drives him around, and we get him just constantly going to different places. And that great scene in the gym where he's trying to find a helicopter guy. We get these different scenes of strung together by one character trying to flee, essentially. And yeah, that is, I think, the biggest strength to the movie, how this snowballs. And like he said, I think that black guy is actually going to get his sister. It's not his girlfriend, because I think he says, if I'm not mistaken, my sister works somewhere and he needs to get her. Or that might have been another character, I can't remember. But I also like the fact that there's this undercurrent of not knowing that is shared between us and the central character as well. Like, if you do get that scene in the disaster movie where the expert gets this data, you're for sure that, okay, well, at least we know the aliens are coming and people aren't listening. At least we know the meteorite is coming, but people aren't listening. In this, we share the same confusion as Anthony Edwards, right up to the point where the black guy gets killed in the car. Now, you mentioned that's the part where you thought it was true. For me, I still didn't know if it was true at that stage, because after all, they're after him because he's in a cop car and killed two cops essentially early on in the night. So it makes sense that people are chasing him and he's unleashing a lot of chaos. But just after that, when the cops back off and people start running and more people seem to be aware of the panic, I love that we're as clueless as Anthony Edwards is at all times what's going on. He hears his girlfriend, doesn't know where she is. The pilot's gone. Where's the pilot? I got to go get a pilot. He goes downstairs into the gym, and then he's trying to find someone, firing his gun out just to even get attention of people. The panic hasn't even started fully yet. And then he finds the pilot. The pilot comes back shot. How did that happen? We don't get any context over how any of this unfolds. Even we don't get any context over that scene of the guy getting shot on the other end of the phone. Why was he getting shot? What was he trying to do? And there's something really scary about that. And even though this is camp, even though this is zany at times, when I was watching this, there was a quiet sense of anxiety creeping into me that expanded as the movie went on. And it was weird because I thought, okay, well, this is fun. I'm enjoying this. This is a nice little movie. But there was something creeping into my heart almost, like a little boot. God, you need to get out of here. You're not getting out yet. You're not getting out of this place. You need to move. Why all these people running off trying to save people? Why are you wasting time to do this? And there is ridiculous lines of dialogue where he's just telling the driver of the van, I need to get the girl. Like anyone's going to care, but I guess you would think that, but when it's said out loud, it's quite funny. But at the same time, you just feel like he's wasting time. There's more time wasted. You should go with them. You should do this. And then by the end of it, when the anxiety creeps up to the climax of this chaos, you are really sweating as a audience member. And I think at the scene where the cops go on fire, that's when you think, oh, fuck. This is something that you can't come back from now. This is real. And that's why I think the scene with the cops is so good as well, because that's when you really think, okay, we're having fun. We're enjoying this. Now it's real. Now it's real for the characters. Now it's real for these zany bunch of people. And after that, it gets realer and realer. And I really like the scene as well where the helicopter pilot comes back and he says, oh, I told you I wouldn't leave you. I told you I'd come back for you. In another movie, he comes back and they're flying away. But in this, no, that's just your story. That's how far you got. You got wiped out in the first phase of an apocalypse movie. And this is where your story ends, with failure. And we followed you for that ride and you didn't get out. Like that's the stuff you dream of finding in the apocalypse genre, isn't it? And it is a very neat and bold finish that they happen to fall in the tar pits. But that's fine. We're on the side of the film by then. And it's not something you're thinking, oh, come on, they happen to fall in this tar pit. Maybe you are. I don't know. But I feel like I'm thinking, well, that's a cool way to end it. And it's also a dark way to end it as well. Once you can get past the fact that they happen to fall in the tar pit. Although I feel like it's giving you so much other stuff that you don't really feel like questioning that. Because it's giving you the fact that they didn't survive. It's giving you the fact that these characters who we've watched start off walking, then jogging and sprinting to absolutely powering it through their escape route. This is where they end up, in the pit. And because you get that, and when she's trying to escape, you get a great moment where he says, no, don't go outside. And then you said they're okay with it when they say it. I don't think they're okay with it, and I don't think that's how they come to terms with it. I think that scene can be read in so many different ways, and maybe so many things are true at the same time. They're trying to come up with something to calm them down in the most fucked up situation imaginable. They're trying to tell a story to themselves in real time to calm themselves. There's lots of people who say life is about stories and life is about narratives. And what do you do when you're aware your story's ending in real time? What do you do? And what they do is they or at least he does. He tries to come up with a story, will be brought back. This is the type of stuff we were into when we were alive. This is the type of things that we used to bond over in our dates. We freed lobsters early on. This is where our story ends. And I think the actors do a really good job at that moment where they acknowledge this is where they're going to die. They both acknowledge the story, but then you can really see the fear and the look that they're unconvinced by their own type of ending narrative in this moment. And that is really frightful, and why I think Miracle Mile is definitely something that I would recommend to people, and I think it's a worthy movie to talk about. I think if you're into the apocalypse genre, this is so unique to my eyes. It's a beautifully shot film. It's got beautiful locations, like you said, and it's got such a unique structure to it for this type of genre as well, that I think it has to be part of the canon of something you check out. And yeah, I liked it. Seems like you liked it a lot more than me, but at the same time, I liked it plenty. So that's definitely 2 for 2. So yeah, thanks for bringing it to my attention.
Hey man, just put my son down to sleep there now. Put on the baby monitor, hoping he doesn't wake up. Hopefully I can get out this possibly actually quick voice message. I'm not sure how long this one will be, but yeah, I do have a tendency to say quick message before sending you War and Peace, the audiobook. But yeah, nice to hear your thoughts. I think in the last couple of weeks I've sent a couple of movies I really enjoyed your way, Possum, Triangle, and you've really had a bad time with them. So I'm really glad to hear that you liked this film a lot. You mentioned multiple times in your voice note that I liked this film much more than you liked it, or more than you liked it. Obviously, that's a very difficult thing to compare. I don't know. There's not a unit for how much one liked film, but what I would say is I'm really, really grateful for movies like this. I'm really, really grateful for unique, interesting films that are like, this wasn't just cookie cutter another movie, like another one of these. This is a movie I'm so glad that I've seen, because it is like a one-of-a-kind reference point. Like I can imagine referencing this movie quite a lot, because it's such a special and singular vision. And I also really, really liked it. I've had a really good time with it. But, you know, make no mistake, this is not going into like my favorite films of all time or anything like that. This is just a really good, solid Friday night's entertainment for me. And, you know, I watched it 24 hours ago or whatever, and it's probably gone up in my esteem over that time as I just like think back to all these little details in it. It's so packed full of details. Also reminds me of, like, you know, there's an old school style of movie. And when I say old school, I'm not talking about like the 20s or something. I'm talking the 80s and the 90s, really. A good example of this would be Home Alone, where it's just fun and entertaining and engaging all the time. Like, it's like every time someone says something, every moment where someone, like, just constantly, the movie's trying to give you something. It's trying to be special, a good special experience for you, not trying to be some like artful masterpiece. It's not trying to be just like a pure cynical cash grab. It's just like good, fun entertainment the whole time, where you're not, you know, bored. You're just like sat there watching me. I don't know how to describe it, but this is, you referenced in your voice note that Anthony Edwards, to whatever extent you can pin him down, he is the epitome of like an 80s leading man. And I think one thing, I don't know if I really mentioned it other than in the context of the Cold War, but this is, of course, I don't think you've mentioned it either, really, but this is a very 80s movie. You know, it's maybe one of the most dominant parts of the experience of watching this film now in the 2020s is watching it, and like the haircuts and the fashion and the music, the Tangerine Dream soundtrack, which we didn't mention, but which is fantastic as always from them. It's just super 80s. And I think it's not super 80s in the sense of like, oh, this is just your typical 80s movie. It is a super unique vision. So like it's not just like watching it. Yeah, this is what all movies were like in the 80s. But yet it is still really 80s in many ways. And yeah, I don't know. I took a tremendous tremendous entertainment value from the film. I may have liked it more than you, and I probably like it more than I liked it last night now. And I can also see myself watching this movie again in like, 5-10 years. And, you know, if I had enough time on my hands, or if I was like, in a family that like had this, back in the day had this on VHS, it was one of the family favorites. I could see this, granted it's like a super intense apocalyptic movie, but for so much of it, it's so fun that it is that type of film that you could just watch over and over and over again, because it's just full of fun little details and weird details, just like idiosyncratic little things. Like where he drives it, he like goes, when he arrives at the location where he's supposed to be having this date, granted 4 hours late, and he like sort of crashes into a palm tree and these rats fall out onto the hood of his car. There's just like non-stop little things. Same with like the reason for the phone call in the first place is the guy he's super excited and he's super like adrenaline rushed about like, we did it, we're locked in, we're going to rain down the nuclear weapons and everything. But really the actual reason for his phone call is to tell his dad that he's sorry about what happened last summer. And we get a callback to that later on where Anthony Edwards actually calls the father, figuring out that he just needs to change the area code. And he, at the end of the call, is like, oh yeah, he wanted to tell you that he's sorry about what, and then he kind of just, it cuts off. But there's never a dull moment in this movie. And that's just to kind of clarify, because you said that I didn't like the last third of this movie. So I want to just kind of like talk you through my journey with it so that I've properly articulated this. I found the run from when the phone call first happens to when the police arrive at the gas station so fun and such a good vibe that I love that movie so much. I was sad to see it go. Everything, once like shit gets real, basically when they kill the cops, or when the cops get killed, or however you want to put it, it's a different movie for me at that point, because it's then going, whether or not this is real, like whether or not a nuke is happening, we now pass a sort of point of no return of like, this isn't just going to be like a fun little misadventure, quirky rom-com. Like it is like, it's gotten incredibly serious. I'm not saying it's a serious movie beyond that point necessarily, but the consequences, it's not as light as it has been. And a new movie sort of starts there. And that, I'm don't sort of take this too literally, because I know it all runs together from start to finish as one great movie, and not a very long movie either. But the movie then that's like, no, this is fucking serious. We've already had death in this movie. Death is on the cards. More death could happen. It's a real legit fucking serious frenzied like situation. That once you kind of accept that, then I like the whole rest of the movie. So I like everything in this movie. If there's a period of the movie that I'm more unsettled with, it would be the first 20 minutes, where I might like it more on next viewing. But as I'm watching it, I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I'm so I'm not sure I'm loving these people, these characters. So if the movie is basically just going to be, you have to love and be charmed by these this couple. You have to be invested in their romance. Then I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be on the same page as where this movie needs me to be. But it's still doing good, cool stuff. I love that scene where he drops her off and they meet he meets the two grandparents, and there's the hot dog scene and stuff like that. Like, it's always good stuff. But once you get to that diner location, which is phenomenal, and then you get the phone call, and then you get that initial run with the cans and the car and like all the banter within the diner, like all the different punters, the air hostess looking girl, and the, jumping off the freeway, and then he's in the car with the other guy. Like, that's just great fun. Anyway, I like the movie all the way up to the end. I think it's really, really good. But I was really enjoying a particular vibe and wavelength that I was in at one point in the movie, which ultimately gets satisfied. You mentioned there in your voice note that you tried to follow my instruction to not read anything about the movie, but when you were putting it on the streaming service, you read the little, like, I don't know if it was like just the keywords or the genre words, and it said that sci-fi was one of them. And yeah, that's a funny thing. Like, I think sci-fi is a genre name or whatever that gets thrown around way too liberally. Like, this isn't sci-fi. It's sort of speculative political fiction, you could say, alternative histories, that like whatever genre you chose to go with. I don't think sci-fi would be a reasonable one to go with. But at the same time, I have seen sci-fi used to describe apocalypse movies, like nuclear apocalypse movies before. I don't agree with it, but yeah, I was hoping that you wouldn't read just what the film is about, that the film is about an impending nuclear attack, which you didn't, but you read something that's even arguably even more corrupts the experience. And of course, like you said, if I say, watch this movie, don't read anything about it, I'm already saying quite a loud statement. I just didn't really know how to get you to watch this film not knowing the thing. So maybe what I should have said to you is like, oh, just watch this movie, and like not made any, and maybe could have got lucky and you just didn't like Google it or didn't go on IMDb or check it out or anything, and you just threw it on. I think the best version of this film, which neither of us got, is the version of the film where you start watching the film not knowing that there's going to be anything more to, or not even suspecting that there's going to be anything more to it than a rom-com or romantic drama, whatever, 80s romance movie, John Hughes type of thing. We didn't get that experience, but like, we still had a really good time with it. But it's very, very hard now to end up in that situation. I think you only really get there if you're like so invested in a particular actor or director or something that you're just kind of like working your way through a filmography. So you're watching films with like no or as little context as possible. But yeah, I guess the ideal thing is you're just like an avid film buff and you go see every single film that's released in the cinema, and you don't really read about them beforehand. You just like you go down and you see what's on, and watching TV, I guess, like classic TV channels like Turner Classic Movies, just like I turn on the television and I watch the movie that happens kind of thing. That's probably the ideal circumstances to watch a lot of films. But yeah, I guess not many people experience that. You talked about how you were sort of struggling to pin down what the movie is, which is like, I think I have that experience. I think I would imagine almost everyone has that experience with this film. And I really like that. Reminded me, not to say that this is necessarily the case with this film, but it reminded me a little bit of Swiss Army Man, where you're watching a film that's so strange and it's so unconventional, and like you don't know what you're going to get. And really, every film, as you're watching it, you should feel like, I don't know what I'm going to get. But once you've seen a fair few movies, that's not really the case. Like it's actually films like Miracle Mile that bring into focus how predictable film in general is. Hang on, I'm just going to stop this voice message for a second. Okay, just a couple last little tidbits about this film that came to mind. One thing is I love the time of day it happens. When I watched it last night, I was kind of thinking, I was sort of like viewing it more as just a film that takes place at night. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, yes, of course, obviously it is a film that takes place at night, but most films that take place at night happen in the part of the night where people are awake, right? From, let's say, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. or something. The part of the night where nightlife happens, where it's like, bars are crowded and all that. So this film, I mean, obviously there's the opening 20 minutes, but from when the shit hits the fan, from when it becomes like a real-time story, it starts at 3:45 a.m. That's when he wakes up, turns on the TV, and realizes what time it is. And then, he obviously drives straight to the location. And I'm sure there must have been other films made at that time of day. But I used to work night shift in a hotel as a night porter. And, it wasn't in LA or something. It wasn't some massive, exciting city, but still, like, I have a bit of familiarity with, everyone does, of course, you've had like various moments in your life where you ended up sort of in that, awake or up in a city at that time, whether it was like you're catching an early flight or whatever it might have been. But like I used to experience that every night. And I really, really love that time of day, that super early morning where you've got this mixture of people who are at the end of their day, people who are at the beginning of their day, like, the people who are doing like trash collecting or whatever, people who are kind of like random weirdos who are just, they don't really adhere to any sort of reasonable clock or something. And it's not completely dead. Like if you're in a city, especially a big city like LA, but really it's just any kind of like decent sized city, it never fully dies down across the 24 hours. But the time when it takes place at 4 a.m. to, let's say, 5:30 might be the kind of stretch of time covered in this film. That stretch of time is just like really, really interesting. And if they had made a film about like, a post-apocalyptic situation at a different period of time, let's say like the afternoon or something, it would be such a radically different film. Or even if it was at the kind of standard nighttime, the kind of nightlife hours. So yeah, that's another little thing that makes this film unique, because especially, eventually there's like the streets are flooded with people and all sorts of chaos and frenzy. But in the early scenes of the movie, like it is like there's some joggers jogging around, and there's like this guy over here, and there's like anyone who's up and about and out there just feels like a bit of a character, and feels like there's this really interesting energy already in the air that exists at that time of day, that is just a great backdrop for this film. On the ending, where you were saying that I had kind of indicated that they were happy to be dying in the tar pits, I like your read of it, where they're sort of narrativizing it to make themselves be able to accept their fate, or they're kind of in denial, but they don't quite believe in. They're saying, they're kind of telling a story to each other, but you can see the fear in their eyes. I think, that's definitely a very fair interpretation of it. But I also think, certainly they're not happy to be dying, but I do think they genuinely take some poetry from the fact that they are dying there in that location. This is a quirky film, it's a 500 Days of Summer job, so I think
I completely agree that they're not happy to be dying, and they're fearful for their lives, and they spend the whole rest of the movie trying to survive. But I do think there's a genuine, like, it's a indicator of these unique characters that, in my opinion, there is some genuine affection for the idea of they're going to be preserved together for like millennia now. But yeah, it's an interesting scene, that it all kind of, as you say, it's such a, they're in motion so much, and it ends in just this little car. And even the lighting in that car, the kind of like weird reflection-y light spots that are running across their faces, is really interesting, or just like really compelling. The whole film just looks incredible. Just seeing if there's any other last little points. Oh yeah, there's one other thing that I wanted to clarify. I think you had misinterpreted something I said. So the point where I, as an audience member, decide that it is definitely real, in other words, it's not a prank phone call, it is definitely a real situation, is not when the black guy and his sister or partner, whatever it is, crash or are being chased by the police. I appreciate that they can be being chased, or probably are being chased by the police because he's committed a crime, and they're trying to chase him down. It's got nothing to do with this sort of apocalyptic event. But it's when they're inside the building and the police are, on their megaphone, get out, we got you surrounded and everything. And then when they come out, the police have retreated. The SWAT guy up on the side of the building is just like jumps down and like runs off. And it's clear now that all the police and everyone is basically aware of this emergency, and they're retreating, and therefore there is something that goes beyond one phone call. So it's when they exit that building, rather than the fact that the dude smashes through the window in this police chase. And then is there any other little stray observations I had? I think I like your point about how there is the conversation about, would you believe this or would you not believe this? But the task that the film has really is to convince you that Anthony Edwards believes it. And I think that is done really well. Like most stuff in this film, I think that's done really well. He gets this phone call during, this paranoid era of the Ruskies bombing us. And it seems quite convincing. Like, it seems like it would have to be like fucking Academy Award winning prank phone call. Then he hears the gunshots on the other end of it. It seems extra intense. Then he walks in frazzled. I mean, he just woken up. It's like 4 a.m, but he doesn't fully believe it yet, right? But he wants to explore it. I'm just looking at a fox walking along the road in front of me, which is nice. He wants to vet it to the best of his abilities. So he starts asking questions, and I get the impression at that point that he's like, I think that there's a very, very good chance that this is true, rather than this is definitely true, right? And because he thinks that there's a very good chance that it's true, he's very tight close. There's kind of coming over towards me. Because he thinks there's a very, very good chance that it's true, he then wants to kind of get closer to whether or not it is the truth. And in doing so, when he starts like talking to the punters in this little diner, he utters his recall for the phone call is the most implausible part, if anything. But he utters this code, this like launch code that he's heard of over the phone. And the other girl with the laptop and the early mobile phone there, she recognizes it, and she can make the connection and go, yeah, I can essentially verify that this is correct information. And that's when he fully believes it. So I think just walking through those steps, they just about get there. And if you didn't buy that he would believe it enough to have got to that point of saying the code,
like actually even bothering to do that, not just keep it to himself and be kind of shook. If you didn't buy that, it would be a lesser film because you'd have had to kind of go, okay, whatever, like it doesn't make any sense, but whatever, they needed a catalyst for the movie. But for me at least, I feel like I did buy that, and I think for a sort of quirky, crazy, wacky movie, almost everything in the film is kind of earned. I think that scene where the guy is shooting at him while he has to like retreat down the sewers is probably the biggest swing that the movie takes in a way. But at the same time, you can go, well, how would people be acting in that situation? Like you see people just in average everyday life acting completely irrationally. So if they feel that they're about to get nuked and they're in this like traffic jam where everyone's jumping all over the cars and stuff like that, and they have a gun on them, which they probably would have taken their gun out with them, then yeah, maybe that happens. So you could certainly make this film without with it being much more implausible, but weirdly the whole film kind of does make a degree of sense. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that comes to mind. Yeah, good solid flick. I have enjoyed the film enough that I'm like, I feel definitely interested in watching, I think it's called Cherry 2000 is the film before this. But I feel very strongly that it's probably not that good. So I don't know whether I want to do that. I don't know. But anyway, I'm glad to have caught up with this one.
Hey man, just heading out now to get some breakfast on a Sunday morning. Get some croissants. And partner wants some strawberries, which is nice. Yeah, I like what you said about the certain time of night, that kind of, I can't remember what the word is. It's not the witching hour. It's not the twilight hour. It's this thing that has very low energy, but at the same time, depending on where someone else is in their night, it has the potential for very high energy as well. And yeah, I've certainly been getting a flight at that time or getting the ferry at that time and doing something. It's a very unique time. And I'm not sure if the movie Diner was set around that time as well. It's been so long since I've seen it. But certainly this lends itself, and the diner in this movie lends itself to a certain type of mystery, to who would be the people that would be in this diner at this time of night. Who are these characters who would be sitting at this location? So it already has this inbuilt intrigue as well. And like you mentioned, everyone seems like a character around this time. But I also wonder, since you put it in terms that this movie basically from the point of the diner on is set in a real time, and I think it's 4:45 or 3:45, I can't remember, but very, very early morning. But I wonder, now that you've said it in those terms, and not to say that this movie is believable by any means, but I feel like the fact that the movie is set in the morning and in real time ultimately harms it, because there's no way by the third act of this movie there'd be that many people out and aware of the apocalypse impending and aware of the nuclear disaster, because there's no drill. We never hear anything like that. Not many people are going to be up at that time. As we see when he wakes up in the hotel, he's switching channels. There's no social media at the time. So the fact that the movie starts off in that state of energy and reaches immense high energy at the end is brilliant on one level, but in terms of the time and the setting and the fact that this is meant to be pretty much taking place over an hour and 20 minutes, where's all those people come from? Where's all those people heard about this nuclear thing? Unless people start to commute way earlier in LA that I don't know about, because they wouldn't be getting it on Twitter, they wouldn't be getting loads of phone calls and everything. I'm just curious of where the hell that panic would have come from that quickly, that there'd be so many cars. It doesn't quite merge up. But it's a minor thing anyway. It's just that you brought it to my attention. And if you didn't, it would never be brought to my attention, because what you gain from both scenes in isolation, you get way more from. So it doesn't really matter. Funnily enough, I found the director on Twitter. He's got basically 150 or 200 followers. Not that he cares, I presume, but I might actually hit him up with the old cinema callback. Hey, you got any time to send us a message? You want to talk about your movie? Huh? Don't know if he'll respond, but I found out another piece of information while doing a little bit of research that you might be able to be on the ground to answer. That he has directed a few episodes of The X-Files, or at least wrote them. There's so little information about him on his filmography and that. In fact, he just has a selected filmography. So when you're watching X-Files, which I know you are at the moment, you're on season 3 or something like that, you were saying, keep an eye out for him and let me know if the episode has a little bit of an extra visual flair or something different, or maybe some of the similar ideas of what we saw in Miracle Mile. And because I know Vincent Gilligan, the guy who done Breaking Bad, he's done an episode of X-Files with, what's his name, Bryan Cranston. And I watched that after Breaking Bad, and it was a very good episode. So keep reporting back to me on that if he does turn up in your watch.
Hey man, nice to hear you having a nice Sunday morning. We're having a good one ourselves. Had a big pancake session and then Chappelle Roan dance session with the kids. I'm at Diner maybe set at a similar time, because my memory of Diner is that it's sort of the afters, like it's set after a night out. They all go to the diner. I don't know if it's quite as late as this, if we're going to be really like pedantic about it, but I need to rewatch Diner. I absolutely love that movie, but I haven't seen it for probably decades, so definitely need to get on that again. And then to your point about this time of day, and I appreciate that you're saying this doesn't really ruin the movie or anything. But if it is set in real time, and if that climax happens at about shortly after 5 a.m., is it realistic that there's that many people in the streets? I mean, I fully agree with you that it doesn't really matter if it's realistic, but to just defend it a little bit, I would say it's LA, right? Like there's more people in that urban sprawl than probably anywhere in the world. We know by that point that the dissemination of information is not just coming from that one phone call at the beginning of the movie, but is coming from maybe like many or countless. Obviously, it's spreading. And I think, like, let's say I call my sister in LA and say, like, get the fuck out of there. Like, that isn't just that one person knowing about it. It's any hoopla she causes is adding to it. So I think by the end of the movie, people are kind of looking out their window. There's absolute pandemonium there, and they're sort of joining in. And I'm not saying it's necessarily realistic, but I do think, hopefully we'll never get to find out, but I do think that in a situation like this, the chaos would ramp up fairly quickly. And, we maybe see like 500 people tops, maybe 100 people engaging this, but this is an area of tens of millions of people.
So yeah, but I guess they ramp it up a little bit for the for the spectacle of it. And yeah, totally reach out to the director and I'd be interested to kind of hear more of his story. Have to look him up to see if I can think of any good questions for him. But just off the top of my head, I think this film was written a long time before 1988. I believe it was like it was almost like, the Blacklist type thing, where it was one of the most talked about screenplays in town. And it was getting like, I think Warner's had it for a while and then he bought it back off them, and they were going to make a big movie with Nicolas Cage or Kurt Russell or whatever. And then the movie that we end up with is still got so much production value on screen, but it's obviously a smaller, lower budget film, which is better in a way because you get like Anthony Edwards, who's more of a kind of everyman than the big action movie version of this, which would be a little bit more like, yeah, we've seen that movie before. But it got me thinking, like, if it was sort of in some form of production for a long, long time, and then it comes out a year before the fall of the Berlin Wall, is there a element to this film finally got made and got released in 1988? Had it not managed to get over the line when it did, and it got delayed like an additional 4 years, would it ever have been made? Like, is there any point in making this movie after 89? So it'd be interesting to sort of hear. And also, like, I suppose, as we're two younger people who weren't, I mean, we were alive when this film came out, but we weren't conscious of the Cold War. Like, it's difficult for us to connect with the audience experience of this film on release. So, yeah, it'd be just interesting to hear his thoughts on, like, putting a film like that. Was he almost like responding to a demand? I don't mean like in a kind of capitalist sense, but just, did this movie need to be made kind of thing? It's one of these things where, like, it's the elephant in the room to ultimately make a film like this. There's various other movies about the kind of nuclear war starting. Great one by Raymond Briggs, the guy who made The Snowman. I forget the name of the movie, but really, really affecting film. So yeah, just hearing his thoughts on that would be interesting. And just sort of jumping off our conversation, like, how we both feel that, like, this isn't a film that's like slavishly adhering to the real-time clock of, like, we're watching 5 minutes of the movie, that has to be a thing that would take 5 minutes. I mean, it doesn't really feel like that type of film, but maybe just on a script level or on a production level or even like on an editing level, when you're taking stuff out after you've shot it, like, how much was he thinking about that real-time clock element of the film, or was he not really thinking about that at all? And yeah, I think you probably can think of a few questions yourself. It is definitely a very stimulating and interesting film, so would be really cool to catch up with the writer-director.
Your mailbox is full. Please delete new or stored messages which you no longer need so that new messages may be received.